he recorded that one in New York. A year later, came back to Havana and recorded again, and very clearly uses the drum set. We'll listen to that in a second. So there's 1931. I said we could probably get earlier. I was looking through the discography, and the discography is split into two sections at the collection, the DSLR collection. There's pre-1925 and post-1925. And so I kind of, I was searching online, and this thing came up about Moise Simon recording 3 sides in 1925. And I looked, and I found it under the instrumentales. The chapter is called Varios in the discography, and then there's a subchapter called Instrumentales, and I found the Moise Simon recording. And so I wrote to Veronica and said, is there any way I could hear this? And they digitized it for me, and it came back. And you can hear, so if you look at this photo, this is the photo, this is where I believe, this is why I believe the recording might have drum set. If you look at the photo here, violas, the timbal, in the back, and here's a drum set. This is a bass drum and a snare drum, and you can see wood blocks and a cymbal attached, another cymbal over here. So there's 2 players here, and when I found listings of the personnel in this group, and they list the drum set player and they list the timbal player. When you listen to the recording, you can hear timbal, and then you hear wood block. So it's hard for me to say for sure they were using a batería, but you don't hear the timbre of a wood block in very many recordings, Cuban recordings, even of Cuban style music in that time. If you hear wood or wood block, it might be on a piece of bamboo or on the sides of the timpani, but it wouldn't have the kind of tone that you hear on this recording. So let's listen. This is what I believe, this is what the earliest one that I believe has a recording. This is 1925. So I bested my second best by 6 years. It's a tough recording. You hear wood blocks? Playing similar patterns to what we heard General Martin do. Part of that, they were not his own patterns, they were things that were happening in other music. And then back to the patterns. That's what you hear on a typical dancehall recording, but you wouldn't necessarily hear the wood block. Those are pilots. So that's the earliest recording I could find, and we went to look at the green cards on Monday. The green cards.
1931.
25.
25.
Yeah, so 31 was the earliest I could find, and then I had to consult the collection here to find anything. And I saw the listing, and I just hoped that the recording matched the photo.
This was recorded
of the
in New
personnel.
York?
No, Havana. So I was looking for recordings done in Cuba. You know, that's this project is based on recordings done in, because that's evidence that there was a drum set there. Right? There was obviously drum sets in New York already.
Where did the term batería come from, which you already mentioned?
No, that's a good question.
No?
I should know that.
But you found it early in the bibliography and the discography? Because you've used it already,
Yeah.
batería, as it came to be.
Batería, I mean, it's battery. They use a similar word in Portuguese. It's the same word. Drum battery is an older term, military term.
Okay.
So, I mean, I guess
Well,
that
actually, I
answers
think
the
it probably
question.
goes
For
back to,
bater, no?
I think it actually goes back to French originally.
Yeah.
I would be willing to bet that the original term comes from baterie.
Right, which would be military.
Like the military.
Right.
Yeah, so, well, and of course the influence from France in the 19th century is the conservatoire. So that is what gets dispersed throughout Latin America
Right.
in terms of pedagogy. So Brazil has a conservatory in 1840, which is established on the model of the French conservatory, which was founded in the late 18th century, like 1799, something like that. So I would be willing to bet that this term, technical term, comes from France and then goes to Latin America.
But it's interesting because you wouldn't have had that term to describe a drum set until probably 1900 or a few years right around the turn of the century. So you have to
so maybe it referred
reawaken
to
the-
specifically to the military
Right.
use of it.
Right, and it was military drums, yeah, to start with. So let's look at a couple other recordings. This is the one from 1931. This is Don Aspiazu, Lamento Africano, and you can hear the drum set much more clearly in this one. So 6 years later, clearly they were using the drum set a little more, at least in the recording studio. The photos that I have show that they were using it live before that, but not until 1931 they were recording this clearly. This recording is better than the last one. Drum rolls. Notation of approximately what it sounds like you're playing. Snare drum. It's kind of a typical early jazz swing feel on the snare drum. It's a popular song too, recorded by a lot of different artists. Top of the drum set as you start to hear the hi-hat again. So, we say Afro-Cuban jazz starts in the 1940s in New York. This is 1931. That was a swing feel. Bongo maracas come in. So, this is debate, for sure.
My land, as I stand here before you, my dying race, I implore you. Oh,
Some of the recordings Don Aspiazu did in the same era. Some of them were completely Cuban style, some of them were completely jazz style with English-speaking singers, and then some of them were mixed like this. So he was really doing, like those New Orleans musicians could switch gears, these Cuban musicians were all switching gears too. For entertainment, for commercial purposes, I'm sure that the backup artists just couldn't get it, so they had to play whatever they needed to play. You can start to hear the hi-hat coming in. So it's there, you can hear it. I found videos. This is from, I believe it's from the movie. I haven't seen the movie yet. Actually, we were emailing somebody yesterday to see if I could find a copy of this movie. I think it's from the movie Cuban Love Story, and this is the same group playing their famous version of El Manicero. And after this came out in New York, the rumba craze kind of exploded and started to popularize countries in the United States and Europe and internationally as well. You can see that's Antonio Machin, the singer, and this is Don Aspiazu, Havana Casino Orchestra, were very popular in Havana already before they came to New York. Don Aspiazu's brother was politically connected and moved to New York and found them engagements and gigs and recording sessions, so he had an advantage and became really popular. This version is phenomenal too. This is, I think, pretty close to the personnel that's on the famous recording because it's on Putty Machine. I know the trumpet player is the same trumpet player. I'm guessing the drum set player is the same drum set player, although there was, I found names of 2 different drum set players who played with Don Ascasso at the time, so it could be one of the 2. And then there's the drum set right there in the background. The style that they play in this and a couple other recordings by the same group is they would turn the snares off. So if you look at the bottom of the snare drum, there's the metal wires, the snares that give it that snare drum sound. If you turn them off, it sounds like timbal. And so I found in several videos and recordings where they're playing with one hand with the snares off. And so it sounds like someone playing timbal or pailas, but it's on a drum set because then you can hear a bass drum going at the same time. So it's hard to distinguish a lot of times. You need photos and videos to say, no, I'm pretty sure that's what was going on. I don't want to run out of time. There's another video I found from 1933, and I think this was done in Paris. I know he went to Paris for, he was between Havana and New York for years, and then left for a gig and a tour in Paris, and half of the band stayed in Havana and started their own group. He stayed in Paris for a while and then eventually came back to New York. So I think these recordings, this film was done in Paris, but you can see the drum set player, 1933. So I still think that there's, the reason I'm here is because I still think there's earlier recording examples. So that's the headache that I'm giving Veronica right now, because there's so many that I think that I have photos. I'll show you the photos where it's like, if they recorded with the drum set, it would have been this year's, it would have been this group. So you can see he's on the snare drum, that style I'm talking about again. Looks like he has one hand muting it, one hand playing the stick. He's not even using the hi-hat, just using bass drum and snare. So, the end of this is photos of the earliest groups. So many of these musicians were fairly well known at the time and worked with a lot of different groups. There was the Tokyo Club in Havana where they did the first live jazz radio broadcast. A lot of these players played in those groups. Jose Ramon Betancourt was well known. This is him right here. He's in a few of these photos actually. Camagüey, so it wasn't just Havana. It's not a capital-centric, not a Havana-centric history. It really was spread throughout the country. Next one's band. Orquesta Cine Prado. I think that this is an interesting photo because you have the bass drum and you have a little cymbal, but then you also have the pailas and you have a glockenspiel. So it's hard to say what kind of music they were playing. They might have been Cine Prado. They could have been playing along with movies or theater or whatever, as well as playing different styles of music. This is the band at the Tokyo Cabaret. Alberto Jimenez Rebollar, really well-known singer and drummer at the time. This is him, who, that's one of the people I'm really hoping to maybe find a recording of. He was so popular, so well-known, he played on the radio. He was part of that first radio broadcast in Havana, the first jazz radio broadcast. And so I'm hoping that he might have been recorded with some group. But, so like I said before, the problem, and I emailed Don Cristobal last night, and the same thing I've heard from everybody is that these bands didn't record. The companies weren't interested in recording them. They wanted Cuban music, and so then when they recorded, they ditched the drum set or they weren't playing jazz. So I wrote him also last night. That's what I heard from several people. I wrote him last night and I said, what about these groups? They were so popular. Did they really not record? And he said, I really don't think so. But the Moises Simon recording that I found predated what everyone thought I was going to find. And so I'm still hopeful. If most people say late 30s, and I found 31, and then I found 25, so I'm thinking maybe I can keep inching forward a little bit. So this is somebody who I'm going to try and listen to today. Antonio Maria Romeu is a very famous danzón composer, band leader, recorded a lot in New York, a lot in Havana, in Paris too. And here's a photo with him using a drum set, which you wouldn't ordinarily use in danzón music. You would use pailas and guiro, right? You'd have a scraper and you'd have drums, and they'd probably alternate between different sections. But here he is with a drum set, so I'm going to try and find maybe a recording that he happened to do a different style of music when danzón was getting less popular. Danzón ended up becoming more popular in Veracruz, in Mexico, than it ever did in Havana, so it kind of died off a little in Havana. So maybe he switched styles a little bit as the popularity was declining, so I'm going to try and find those recordings. Here's Moises Simon again. Pedro Sefo again, solo again. This is the comparsa drums. That's basically where I'm at today, is I'm trying to match recordings to these photos and hoping I can find something a little earlier and advance the, or inch closer the history of Afro-Cuban drum set playing, or Cuban drum set playing in general, for the books. Also, I think this topic is really important, and I want to continue this drum set research to other countries because it's really an example of transnational development, you know, cultural diversity and people combining ideas, things not being entirely isolated. That as a human species we're sharing. There's no, you know, disconnect, and it's just amazing to see how things blend. Yeah.
Just to